And it's Ken Kraetzer for Sons of the American Legion Radio and another edition of our interview series. And today we are very pleased to talk with Mike Damergis, who is the graduate director at Iona College of the Sports Communication and Media Program. We see Mike when we're covering Iona basketball, and he is the director of this program. Mike, how are you today?
Good, good. Trying to enjoy the summer as much as people can possibly enjoy it. We've had some nice weather here in New York, so getting out to the beach a little bit and keeping the social distancing, but not wearing my mask when I don't have people around. I must be honest about that.
Well, yeah, it's been different, and certainly the sports seasons all stopped March 12th. Iona was playing down in the MAC tournament in Atlantic City, and they played the first two nights. They lost that night, and then the next day the tournament was canceled, the NBA canceled, and the rest of the sports world followed. What has it been like for you, and just watching the closure of professional and college sports, high school sports too, around the country this spring?
It's weird. Sports is a routine, particularly getting the summertime, you could do what you want during the day, and then you have the Yankees or Mets games at night. And I think the routine, America's routine, has really been interrupted here in a lot of ways. And staying home and then trying to find things to do and working from home. I think we're creatures of habit. We really are. And I think our whole routine has been messed up by this virus. And the goal is to stay safe and stay healthy. It's been a terrible toll on this country, the number of people we've lost that have been affected by this. And I people want to get back to the norm, but we got to be careful still.
Yes, the numbers, the cases around the country are still spiking in some areas, and it is a serious concern. 110,000 Americans have lost their lives during this COVID-19 pandemic. Tell us, if you would, a little bit about the sports communication and media program at Iona College. It's been very popular. You've got some well-known sports figures participating, teaching in the program. Tell us a little bit about it, if you would.
Yeah, it's been growing and growing. We're going into our fourth year here, and we're getting contact from students across the country, really, about the program. One of the appeals of the program, the attractions of the program, is our adjunct professors like Ross Greenberg, who was president of HBO Sports for 30 plus years, has done some incredible documentaries, including 9 Innings from Ground Zero, the Miracle on Ice documentary, and so many more. We have Mark Malusis from WFAN. He teaches a sports radio host. We have Rick Cerrone, the former Yankees PR director. He teaches sports PR course. We've got Arda Ocal from ESPN eGames. So we have so many great adjunct professors that really create not only an education for the students, but a network for the students. And that's one of the most important things students can do. You have the education, you have the networking, and the internships, and that leads to jobs. And those are the three things that are most important: the networking, the education, and the internships.
Well, I taught a little bit of sports marketing over the years, and one of the things I see is that what you learn in sports marketing and sports media can apply to so many other disciplines of business, because you're doing a lot of the same things, but you're focused on one particular area of sports. What are some of the things that students learn in your program?
A lot of things. Of course, writing is one of the things that you're always going to need as a skill. Video editing, how to work a camera, how to create podcasts, how to create stand-ups and raps when you're in the field. So you go cover a game, and you need to know how to package the game. You have to shoot, edit, write. You need to do all that. Social media, sports PR, and the biggest thing, the pinnacle, at the end of the program, you're going to create a documentary under Ross Greenberg. So when you're done, you have a digital portfolio of work over the 2 years that you might be in the program, or you might finish it within 1 year. But the idea is to have a portfolio when you're done of all your work that you could showcase to a potential employer.
Well, you mentioned something that I feel is so important: the importance of being able to write and to create narratives. I still see on social media. There's video oftentimes, but it's usually wrapped around a narrative. And how do you teach writing? What are some of the elements of good writing today that you see in sports and other areas?
I started from even my undergraduate level is you write to me, you write to the sound you get. So you go interview a coach after a game or a player after the game. You want to write to that particular sound. So I always teach them write to the sound bite. Look and review which sound you have, who'd you interview, who'd you get, and then you have to really write and create the script to the soundbite. That's one of the things I stress in our sports broadcast journalism class. Mike Jimenez from CBS Channel 2 teaches that class. He's a sports broadcast journalist, and he has his students prepare sportscasts, radio casts. So if they go into a VOX or some small station, the students will be able to know the elements of putting together a sportscast. Certainly for the documentary, you have to create a script for the documentary under Ross Greenberg. So again, you're writing to the sound you have. Of course, you have an idea you're covering something, but you're writing to the sound. When you're putting packages together in the field covering men's basketball, say, you're writing for who won the game, and you're writing to the soundbite. So that's kind of the way I stress it in my class. But they're learning different aspects of script writing, whether it's for sportscast or for the documentary.
Well, I think that's so important and so on target to write to the sound that you have. One of the things I've noticed and even been commented on in my work is the ability of the lower price of equipment and what you can literally do with a smartphone. When I'm out on the road, and most places, I use a smartphone for doing video, put in a stand, plug in a microphone, and we get great quality. Tell us a little bit about how the lower price of equipment and the quality of equipment today really makes doing video much more accessible for more people and more organizations.
Sure. We want the students to take out the cameras that we have, the field cameras, to get used to that. But we also don't discourage creating stuff on your iPhone. Certainly, we ask them to get a USB mic to do their podcast right on their computer, so it's nice and easy. Not back in the day when we were young, where you needed a radio station to do a podcast or radio show. Of course, podcasts didn't exist when we were in school, Ken. But we want them to create stuff on their phones and ask them to get microphones, tripod stands for your iPhone, and to be as creative as possible, because look what's happened now. The whole industry has gone to creating on your iPhone because of this pandemic. We've had to do a whole new way of broadcasting. So, for example, last semester, when the semester got interrupted from the coronavirus, instead of doing studio shows, we had them do podcasts, but they did all the editing. They gathered the sound gave the sound and video online, but they did a lot of it through their computer and their phone. Basically, the way the whole industry is working right now.
Well, you mentioned something about using a stand to hold up a smartphone, and I always say that when we started using a stand and putting our phone in a bracket versus holding it, and is when we became professional in our SALRadio coverage and plugging in a microphone. Just one of the elements, and your students are learning that. Now, you mentioned podcasts, and we do a lot of them. Sometimes there are times you just can't get video. Sometimes we're talking to some politicians in Congress, and they're moving around. They can't be at their desk, so they'll do a call in, and we develop a podcast format. What are some of the keys for doing a podcast in your mind, and then being able to develop an audience for them?
Yeah, so a podcast, and what I tell the students, you really don't want to go over 10 minutes per se. I mean, sometimes you get a lot of good stuff, and I'm guilty at going a half hour or at times. But for a podcast is really a single idea. So say you're going to do something on Tom Seaver. He's battling his disease right now. You want to talk about Tom Seaver. You don't want to talk about Tom Seaver and the Mets pitching staff. It's not a 3-hour show. So to me, it's one thought that you have, and you go on, say, 10 minutes on that thought. You don't want to be long, so you want to really be centralized, your thought as far as your podcast, and keep it concise. Because in reality today, people aren't going to listen more than 10 minutes. They're just not. They're just too busy with stuff. They want to, see one podcast, one video on one idea. Keep it short, concise, and still informative and entertaining.
Yes, I think that's such a challenge is editing down. But I find sometimes we'll edit down interviews to one answer at a time because you can upload 45 seconds or one answer to Twitter.
Yeah, I'll give you an example of that. Like 2 years ago, I interviewed Kraetzer from WFAN when he was going through the charges of his fraud, and he was let go by WFAN. And so I broke up the interview into parts. I probably talked to him for half hour, but I used about 10 or 15 minutes of it on YouTube. But I pulled a section of about 3 minutes of him talking about his relationship with Boomer Esiason, and that little section got close to 100,000 hits. So again, targeting it to one specific area, because people type in on YouTube, Craig Carton, Boomer Esiason. So the more specific you are to the subject, the better you are and the more hits you'll get.
Very good. I guess you just alluded to how do you generate an audience on social media? Sometimes you're working for an organization, a team, a media organization, a company that may have a following. Sometimes you're kind of creating your own brand as a journalist or a reporter. What are some of the keys as far as developing an audience on social media platforms?
Obviously, promoting it on the social media, the Facebook, the Twitter, and Instagram, and the other stuff. For example, I think I have over 2,500 followers on my USFL site. I wrote a book about the USFL years ago. But I think to keep them engaged, you have to consistently produce content. And that's the important thing, is being consistent with the content. And then you'll get followers, and you might get picked up by somebody. Maybe an athletic might see your work and want to pick you up. And it's happened with a former student of mine. He does a soccer show, and he's going to get picked up by the athletic. So I think the consistency of producing content is the key. You can't just do it once every 6 months. Not going to work. You have to be consistent.
And Mike, you've had an interesting career in sports journalism after earning 2 degrees at Iona. You've done a lot of work for the NFL. Tell us a little bit about your work for the National Football League.
Yeah, in 2004, I was at WFAN, and they said to me one day, "Do you want to produce the Giants games?" And I looked around. I said, "You talking to me?" So I was actually named the game day producer for New York Giants radio in 2004. I didn't stay with the fan too long for a variety of reasons. And I went back in 2009. They called me back. And since 2009, I've been doing a lot of freelance work with the Giants, whether it's game day producer, pregame, postgame. A really great crew: Bob Papa, Carl Banks, John Schmelk is a consistent game day producer, the executive game day producer there. So I enjoy working with them. And I also do some freelance work for Compass Media as a game day producer as well. And last year, I got caught in a snowstorm after the Carolina Green Bay game. It took me 4 hours to get from Green Bay to Milwaukee, which usually takes less than 2.
Wow, that's something. Now, you've done a lot of NCAA work, certainly at Iona. Iona's had an extraordinary run in basketball over the years, especially the last 10 seasons under Tim Cluess. So, he's got to give a shout out to Coach Cluess. Hope he's feeling and doing better.
Yeah, dynamite guy, Tim. Always treated me great. It's a loss for Iona. He's consistent, and to get us to the NCAA as many times as he did consistently. And the year she didn't go, we were on the verge of going. We're one game away or one basket away from going. So he did an incredible job for all those years.
Yeah, great guy. I always felt privileged to work with Tim Cluess, and then in our Army coverage with Jeff Monk. And I was hoping one day to get the two of them on a platform and talk about coaching, and I'm still hoping we can do that someday. What are some of the things that are different for you when you're covering an NCAA event versus a professional event?
Oh, well, it's, you know what? The basics are still the same. You still have to get the sound bite. You still have to follow your report, know who to talk to, the most important players, who's injured, write your script. So whether you're at Iona or the Giants, it's still the same. It's really not that different. Now, the difference is the size and the scope, and going to cover a New York Yankee game. I remember before we're at the podium now, but I remember covering the Yankees for XM radio, and Joe Torre would have his desk, and literally people are climbing on top of each other, and your microphones are being put above your head, and you're in this guy's cameras. You're fighting for position. You're jockeying for position in the locker room scrums or anywhere else. There's a picture of me that was on Yahoo Sports from years ago when I was at XM, and there I am interviewing Brian Cashman, but there was a scrum of other reporters, and you're invading. There was no social distancing except for a centimeter. So it's a scope of the game, whether it's a Giant game or a game at Iona.
I always go back to a comment that John Feinstein, the writer, wrote. We've had the pleasure of meeting John in covering Army football and the Army-Navy game. And he said, you never can have a cup of coffee with a coach anymore. And because of the way, and maybe part of it is because of smartphones and video being able to record so easily, that NFL teams and college teams are very protective of their coaches and players. And they always want to have somebody from the staff in sports information there to be part of an interview. So it's very unusual to have a casual conversation with a coach. Sometimes we can before doing an interview or afterwards, hear how their family is doing. That sort of thing.
Yeah, well, those PR flackies are always on the side 2 feet away listening to what a player might say. It's, I wasn't at that era where, back in the 70s, like a Bill Madden could talk to Billy Martin and, just, hey, let's go get a drink or something like that, when the manager would hang out on the road in the bars, talking to the reporters and stuff like that. Those days are done. Everything's, all digital, all texting. I remember covering the GM's meetings, I guess about 10 years ago. And it was, I think it was in Nashville or Indianapolis. And I remember Cashman and Omar Minaya were sitting in first class, and I was getting on the plane to come back to New York, and I'm, at the back of the plane and everything. And I remember Omar telling Cashman, Ghana, when can you make a deal over a drink or a napkin? Stuff like that. Those days are gone. Those days are long gone. The one-on-one, the personal touch that you had with teams and players, and everything's, the new data it's driven. So it's not the old school way of doing deals or dealing with players. That's all gone, and it's all this new data that's driving professional teams
and college teams. We see that with West Point. Certainly, when you go to the the Power 5 conference games, it's the same. So it's different, but still, it's been a great opportunity for us. What are some of the opportunities that you see for graduates of your program? It's getting real tough in the media, in the paid media side for traditional organizations. Where do you see the opportunities?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's come up a lot during this pandemic. I think there's going to be new avenues created, because I think the day of the fan is going to be diminishing. I remember 20 years ago, I was up in Toronto working for the Fan 590 and host one of the most talented hosts in all the broadcasting. His name's Bob McCowan. And he talked about the day that the television experience is going to be so great, they're not going to have fans. I said, you're nuts. We're always going to have fans at the game. Now, 20 years later, we're not going to have fans at the game. Sure, it's the pandemic, but I think it sped things up. I think there's going to be new avenues to bring the at-home experience better, and you can only do that by getting some closer to the game in many ways. And to me, that's the future of it. You're still going to need the writing, the editing, the reporting skills. All that's still going to be, but I think the media is going to find new ways to bring us into the game. You saw a little bit with the XFL, getting in the play calling and everything like that, getting in the locker rooms. That's going to need to be improved. I could see a day when you have 30,000 people at a football game. Who wants to go to a game and spend 10 hours at a game when you have to get there 3 hours ahead of time, get stuck in traffic? So if you leave your house at 9 o'clock in the morning, get home till 8 o'clock at night on a Sunday night, then you got to work all week on a Sunday. I mean, Saturday maybe, but not on a football game, in baseball games, getting home 11:30 at night, you got to get up for work the next day. I think the experience is going to change.
Mike, if you would, maybe we could finish. Tell us a little bit about the program at Iona. How are you going to have the courses you have this summer going into the fall?
Yeah, so this summer we had a sports social media course. We have a sports PR course with Rick Cerrone, the former Yankees PR director. And also Ross Greenberg is teaching his thesis documentary. And in the fall, we have a video production class that's taught by me. Mike Jimenez is teaching the sports broadcast journalism. And Evan Mandelbaum is teaching the sports audio imaging, which is promos and rejoins and show opens. And Arda Ocal from ESPN is going to be teaching the TV studio anchoring. It's a 36 credit program, 12 classes, and it can be completed within one calendar year. And if you want to follow us, go to iona.edu/sports communication.
And I always tell people on the business side of digital marketing, how many good people are being produced, excuse me, who know the field through college athletic departments. There's just amazing work being done, promoting teams in athletic departments, websites, video, really a lot of leadership. So Mike, great to talk with you today. And do you have a final thought for us?
No, just hopefully we get sports back, but I don't know if we are. People want it back, and boy, there's a lack of good program. That's one thing I've realized not having sports. There's a lack of good programming on television. There really is. I've been watching a lot of Prime videos and the Stars and HBO, but on regular TV, there's a lot of bad programming.
Yeah, and it's going to be declining when you look at the amount of revenue lost by the TV networks this year. Something like around $10-12 billion lost in fees. So it's going to be less and less money to produce original programming.
Well, but, these more reality shows. Oh, great.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. Well, Mike Damergis, great to talk with you. Graduate Director of the Sports Communication and Media Program at Iona College, veteran of WFAN, WVOX, and a regular at the NFL providing coverage. Good to chat with you today.
Thank you for having me, Ken. I appreciate it, and keep up the great work that you do.
Thank you. Appreciate it. It's Ken Kraetzer for Sons of the American Legion with another one of our interviews. So you have a good day, and we'll talk to you very soon. Stay safe.